doctor, hey, this is your problem, and this is the medicine you have to take. I don't want you to be, sounding as if tomorrow I'm going to be fine, and I'm not fine. Now, when I was interviewed earlier about what we should hear concerning this mid-year review, and I said, look, I would like to hear the price we have to pay as a country to get out of this mess, one, and then what we need to do to climb back to health. So I was looking to hear something about, okay, we have the IMF coming A, B, and C. And by the way, we are not sure exactly when the IMF is going to be done, how much we are getting and when, we are not sure. And right now, there are some immediate DD issues we have to deal with. I mean, debt, domestic and foreign debt, actually, issues we have to deal with. And we are not clear. I am not clear how we are going to deal with that. So I was waiting to hear some things about that and then say that, okay, now when we get into this IMF situation, these are the things we have to cut. And these are the things that we have to do to get back into health, and that we are going to be with the IMF for 3 years or so. Okay, I didn't hear that. The loudest thing I heard was that we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel, we have turned the corner, but I don't see any evidence of it. So if you get a drift of what I'm saying, my biggest worry about this mid-year review thing is that it does not seem like the people handling the economy appreciate that we are in crisis and we need to be doing some serious stuff. Now, if they do, then they are not talking like they appreciate the crisis, and they're not giving us things that we need to do to get out of crisis. It is not, comforting to a person who can understand the issues, who is smart, who knows, that look, we're in trouble, to be told that there is no problem, we've turned the corner. Turning the corner in economic terms should be, in figures, in numbers, and in clear, evidence. And I don't see it. It worries me. I don't see it. So honestly, I'm like, something has to happen for us to come down to reality. And I'm not asking for something bad. I hope it's something good. But whether it's going to be the IMF money that's going to come in or something is going to happen, but something has to happen that forces us to brass tacks. It forces us to, deal with reality. And then we would really, shine our eyes and stop the, lofty talking quoted with Bible verses and all the things about how great we are, because we are in crisis. So, Norvan, I'd like to pause here and say that there's a lot of statistics here, but generally my immediate worry is that it does not seem to me that the doctors of the economy are clear about the fact that we are in serious times, and if we don't do some serious things, we'll have a very, very serious price to pay later. My last point is that sometimes we pretend that, smooth talk is going to power through the problems. Smooth talk never powers through any problem. It just shifts the can down the line until, it hits you in the face. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is what you tell a dying person so that they hold on whilst you figure out a strategy to save them. Okay, so hope itself is not a strategy. If you give hope and hope and hope and hope and hope and hope and hope, it gets to a point where the reality will hit you in the face. And sometimes, if we don't get things right and the reality hits us in the face concerning our economics, it may be more than we can take. Okay, we have a situation now where the IMF has essentially taken over our central bank, and the IMF has put aside our laws, even laws concerning how much central bank can finance government, and has dictated to our central bank, the central bank of a sovereign country, what they will do, and we don't have any choice. In another sense, that is an unconstitutional handing over of our national sovereignty. But that is what happens when you keep pushing hope without a strategy. All right. So I hope that we don't get other catastrophic effects of this hope without a strategy thing, where everybody comes and tells us that, look, that we've turned the corner and things are going to be better, and we don't see any evidence. I think I'll pause here and let the others contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Kofi Bento, just a minute. Another question for you. I mean, some would argue their point to you by saying that, listen, this is a finance minister or a government that have seen that all the macroeconomic targets that they set for themselves cannot be achieved, and have been honest enough to come and get them revised to reality, to represent the reality. Is that not good enough?
I am not sure what you are talking about. You see, because indeed, when you say they have come to admit that the macroeconomic targets cannot be achieved, and then we have set us back to reality. Now, in the first place, we have a situation where we are in very, very dire straits. If you are in this kind of economic situation, you are not going to have any kind of economic activity, okay, which leads to the kinds of things that you were expecting to see. So the lack of performance in the economy, or the toning down of our expectations, is not really something that was spectacular. I mean, I'm looking for the words, but the thing is, we are in the mess. All right, it's like trying to wear white when you are walking through mud. Okay, the point is, we will not be able to achieve the things we set ourselves to achieve from the beginning of the year because we're falling down flat. Okay, so as for revising them, it is something that you necessarily had to do. And my issue is that when you revise them, I'm looking at, okay, under the circumstance, okay, what are the brass tacks that we need, to look out for? These are the basic minimums that we need to avoid, things going even worse. But I hear a rehashing of things and say, oh, we hope to achieve this. Personally, I don't think we are going to achieve any of the things that we've set again. So I don't see the point about being pragmatic and bringing down the targets and whatever it is. There was no way we were going to achieve those targets. Bringing them down was not a feat, or something that was spectacular. It necessarily had to be done. And my worry is that even the bringing them down, I am not sure that we are really doing it in such a way as to, touch some key points that can convince us that, okay, by second quarter of next year, we'll be out of this particular area and we can look forward to A, B, or C.
Well, very well, thank you. Let me come back to you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, for you said you as a business person, what were you looking out for that you probably did not see? But ladies and gentlemen, before Mr. Jackson comes in, it is our town hall meeting. You can always tweet at us at Norvan Report, or if you have a question even now, what you do is that you can send us a friend request, we accept it, and then your question will be taken and answer will be given. It's a town hall. You speak your mind, or you give us the questions, or you contribute to the discussion, whether you think it's been a recession or a growth signal, considering what the statement that was put in Parliament by the finance minister. So, Mr. Jackson, I mean, what really were you looking out for that you probably did not see in the statement, the mid-year review statement, as was taken to Parliament by the finance minister?
Yes, Norvan. Good to speak to you. Now, remember that when you look at the numbers that were given, it is actually at odds with the statement that we've turned around the corner. And I'll explain. If your end of year estimate for GDP growth was 2.8%, and you revise it to 1.5%, when at the end of the first quarter, you actually claim we grew by 4.2%, then there's something dramatically wrong. Because you are forecasting a recession in order to drop from the 4.2% to 1.5% for the last two quarters. That's the kind of stuff that have me worried. If you forecast inflation for 18.9%, and then you revise it upwards to 31%, basically you're saying that inflation is not going to come down into any decent territory over the next few months. And the one that hits me hardest is that at the moment you are forecasting that gross reserves will be 0.8 months. 0.8 months is just about 24 days of gross reserves by the end of the year. Hold on. But that is worse than you told us you had at the end of last year. So how can we have turned the corner when our gross reserves are down to a low point of 24 days? by your estimate. So for me, as I look at these numbers, I have a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Those who have access to better data than I have are saying that our growth is going to drop. Those who have access to better data than I have are telling me that my inflation is going to get a lot worse. Those that have better access to data than I have are telling me that we'll be down to 24 days of gross reserves, gross, not net reserves, by the end of the year. What does this say of our forex stock? If we are down to 0.8%, and would it not also quietly be signaling that the exchange rate that has received relative stability is going to jump up? In any case, I think that relative stability is because since 18th of December 2022, we haven't paid any of our foreign debt obligations. The price of fuel has been kind to us, so our biggest single import has brought us the cost in dollars has been lower than we expected. But this will end. At some point, we're going to have to start paying our foreign obligations. Winter is coming in the temperate zones. That means that the price of oil will go up. The oil price cuts that the producing companies, the production cuts that the countries instituted will start to bite. All this put together is bad news. And so for me, when I look at the budget, what I see as a business is that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Definitely not a turning around. And definitely time for us to, as a business, to sit down and say, what are the strategies that I'm going to use between now and the end of the year to make sure that I survive and maybe prosper. As a business person, this budget signaled tough times ahead. It signaled tighten your belt. It signaled that storm clouds ahead. Over to you, Norvan.
Okay, so you as a businessman think that this signals as tough times ahead. What are some of the hard decisions that you need to make? But before that, Dr. Charles Nyaba, I've seen your message that says that you sent us a request. Could you please send a request again so that we will just make you a speaker and then we'll move ahead? Yeah, so Mr. Jackson, what are some of the key hard decisions that you may have to take as a businessman around this time? Because some have said that the challenge with the finance ministry and the government is that they've not been able to help you, the business people, to forecast. It looks like whatever is happening is a knee-jerk reactions, which is not helping businesses to forecast properly, to be able to make the right decisions, and so it's making everything, not as smooth as you guys are looking for. What that you are facing as a business person that is causing you and may not help you to be able to make the right decisions and may put a lot of uncertainty around running of your business from now to probably even to December or next year?
Well, for starters, if it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, then I have to cut costs. Cutting costs invariably means that aside from some subcontractors who are going to have their contracts cancelled, it may also mean that I have to retrench a few staff to grow even leaner. And it definitely means that in this period, I'm not about to start any projects and any new investments that should deliver growth, because I'm not sure of who the off-takers will be and whether my customers will have the purchasing power to do what they have to do. So all of us have to be cautious. That's what when we say it's going to get worse before it gets better, when we say inflation is going to get worse, when we say interest rates are going to go even higher, when we say our gross reserves are going to drop, when we say growth is going to drop to 1.5, for me, it signals cut costs, hold on to any investments, and let's see how it goes. Over to you, Norvan.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank all of you for joining today's space. What you can do for us is that if you have any contribution or you have any question, the questions, there's a first option of you tweeting at Norvan Report. We'll take it and then give it to our guest. Or another way is to send us a request to be a speaker, and then we would allow you ask your question or contribute to the space. And the topic that we are looking at tonight is the 2023 budget review statement, recession or growth signal. Was it a recession or a growth signal? Based on what you heard and what the finance minister who came to read the statement on behalf of government, what do you make of it? Do you think it's a recession that is signaling to us, or it is a growth signal from where you sit? So the floor is open, ladies and gentlemen, to allow you to come in and then also make your points, because it's a town hall meeting. And town hall meeting means that more questions are asked and then answers are given in that regard. So if there's anybody that has a question, just send us a request to be a speaker. We would accept it quickly, and then we would take it from there. But Mr. Jackson, let me come back to you. Yes, you may want to cut down costs. I'm staying with you because you are a business person. Before I go to Mr. Bentil, because you are a business person, from where you sit, what should have been the alternative?
Oh, truly, we were listen, to say that it's going to get worse before it gets better doesn't mean that there are any, I'm suggesting that there were any more alternatives. Except that the one thing that keeps occurring to all of us as businesses is that, why are we still borrowing more? Why is the government not cutting down on expenditure? Why are the government buying treasury bills at such high rates that it is possibly negating the effects of the domestic debt reduction that it did? Those are some of the questions that we keep asking. The domestic debt service for the first half of the year is now hovering around 7.7 billion cedis. Why is the government buying treasury bills at interest rates of in excess of 30% for 365 days, when they cannot pay multi-year bonds at 19% and is dropping them to 11-12%? When they cannot pay cocoa bills, 180-day cocoa bills at 31%, and is dropping them to 12%, 13%, it says it is buying the same 180-day short-term paper at in excess of 25%. That's just plain wrong. That's just plain wrong. So the issue is that we seem to be on the same trajectory of behavior, not wanting to cut down expenditure, reckless borrowing that brought us to our knees, that brought us to this. and you still continuing. Now we're not borrowing off the Eurobond market, but we are recklessly borrowing in the domestic treasury bill market. We haven't cut down on expenditure. The size of government is still the same. The SOEs are still leaking cash out of the public purse. So it's that's what, when you ask what alternatives, the alternatives will be borrow less, drop the interest rates, and reduce your own expenditure. I have to ask, is Agenda 111 that critical? Should you still be pursuing that and putting money against that in our present set of circumstances? Should you not have looked at free SHS again and looked at ability to pay rather than just blanket free for everybody? And I could go on and on and on. What worries us is that the consumption behavior is still going on. What worries us is that the borrowing is going on. What worries some of us is that we're still racking up debts, interest payments that brought us to this point. So obviously something has to change, Norvan. And the alternative is fixing all this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Now let me bring in Dr. Charles Nyaba, the Executive Director for the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. And I think that I've already heard the arguments in the area that, there was nothing in even for agriculture. When we were growing up, we were told that the Ghanaian economy is an agrarian economy, which was being driven by agriculture. But it looks like things have changed. It is now being led by services. So services seem to be taking a chunk or leading the economy as it should be. Dr. Charles Nyaba, if you can unmute yourself, what is the Ghana you want when it comes to agriculture, and how you expected things should have been run or managed by the doctors of the economy, as if I'll borrow from Mr. Kofi Bentil? Dr. Charles.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, please.
Okay. Good evening, Ivan. Yeah, so I agree with the previous speakers. The fact that the Minister of Finance tried to polish the state of our economy, because even if you look at the figures that were presented as the agriculture performance, I think he crops under the planting for food and jobs that we're doing well. But if you look at those figures that were given, it's not a reflection of the current state or performance of those crops. For instance, he mentioned that there is improvement in maize productivity to 135%, rice 67%, soya 18%. I know and I understand that mid-year budget is a platform for government to update all of us on the state of the economy and also put out the necessary adjustment to ensure that things get right. But to go and pick figures of economic indicators in 2017 or 2018 and present that as performance of the economy in a mid-year budget, especially in a year that those commodities are yet to produce results, then that is worrying. I say this because we were all in this country in December 2022 and January 2023, when the Minister of Food and Agri tried to paint a picture that all is well with the agriculture sector by going to rural areas to bring in plantain to sell at the ministry's headquarters. That was at the peak of food crisis, where poultry farmers were not getting raw material. Majority of them have to close down their poultry
farms, uh, industries that rely on raw material from agriculture have to close down their performance because these raw materials were not available. As we speak, Ghana records the highest food inflation in West Africa. Even if you take the whole of Africa, apart from Zimbabwe and then Sudan, we still have the highest inflation in the whole continent. So for us as farmers, we were expecting that once everybody is looking up to the agriculture sector to perform the measures to turn the economy around, we were expecting to see at least some information that will give us hope. And even you agree with me that 2023 budget has been the highest, have seen the highest budget allocation to the agriculture sector over the previous years of 1.9% of the national budget. Last year, we had 1.24%. Last 2 years, it was 0.56%. But as we speak, I can tell you that farmers have not gotten any form of support from the Ministry of Food and Agri to support them to produce, whilst we are in the third quarter. So if food price inflation is leading in the inflation basket, any serious government would have actually put in measures to ensure that you increase your agriculture productivity. But as we speak, nothing has been done. Even though there were a number of interventions that were listed in the 2023 budget, which also reflected in the mid-year budget, all those interventions are still pending. You talk of review of planting for food and job, which is the main government agriculture program. Nothing has been done. Because during the consultation period, we agreed that we needed to actually review the planting for food and jobs because of the corruption and then poor implementation of some of the strategies. Because if you take fertilizer, the people were taking it for granted. Those who were bringing fertilizer were bringing poor quality fertilizer. The price between even the subsidized fertilizer and that of the open market, they were no different. So at least the review was necessary at the time. But after that was done, and then we were to engage aggregators, give them credit guarantee to take loans to support farmers, nothing has been done up to now. However, what is even worrying is that whilst we were crying of all this one, we were expecting government to do something. Since we are taking the subsidy away and we, the farmers, have agreed that it was being abused, we were expecting that government at least do something that will ensure that input prices goes down. But what we did, because we were in desperate need to show to IMF that we are taxing our people and we are making more revenue, we rather impose duties which were originally not on agriculture commodities, on all agriculture-related commodities, from farm machinery, from inputs, from veterinary medications, to fertilizers, and then seeds. Okay? We were just talking to some of the importers who have some of their inputs on the port to clear and they couldn't clear. You take a 20-footer container of agro inputs, which is costing 90,000 Ghana cedis. Previously, the duties on it was 15,000. Today, the duty is going for 90,000, from 15,000 to 90,000. You take veterinary vaccines, which was is costing 420,000. Tax or import duties alone is costing 330,000 Ghana cedis. This was just in May. We spoke to all these people. They have their inputs locked up at the port. They couldn't clear because the Ministry of Finance introduced new taxes that made it impossible for them to clear. So when the season started, farmers were ready. They were waiting for some of these inputs. Some were seized to plant. And because these people could not clear, they couldn't also get them. Those who were able to clear them, the cost was so high that farmers could not actually purchase. So how are we going to turn agriculture around to ensure that we supply more food to turn the food price inflation we are currently facing down? Nigeria is facing food price inflation of just 25.5%. And what they did was to put in measures, ensure that private sector get loans and support to support farmers. Okay? To the extent that the president even have to declare state of emergency on food security. You go to Togo, they have food price inflation of 7%, Burkina 17%, Cote d'Ivoire less than 7%. And in all these places, I've been interacting with the farmers. The kind of interventions that are put to ensure that they turn agriculture around, you won't believe it. Today, we are depending in Burkina Faso for maize. We depend in Burkina Faso for sorghum. We depend in Burkina Faso for tomatoes. So, and then the farmers in Doma are depending on Cote d'Ivoire for maize. So how can a country like Ghana continue depending on these people who used to come here for inputs and food items and still claim that we want to turn the economy around? So for us as farmers, I think we were not impressed with what we heard from the finance minister. Our expectations were dumb, and we don't know when these strategies that are being taken to turn agriculture around is going to be in place.
I see. So, Dr. Charles, I will come back to you. Let me quickly go to Professor Lord Mensah. For those of you watching us on television, that is on ABC News GH. Thank you very much for making time to watch us also. We're also live on ABC News GH this evening. This is the Norvan Reports Economics Governance Platform. I don't know whether we should say X space or Twitter space, but either way, I think it's fine. As we try to move along, you can always join us and then be part of the conversation. But as I indicated to you, we are also live on television right now. So for our TV audience, we thank you very much for making time to watch us. If you have any question, you just have to go on Twitter or go on X at Norvan Reports. At Norvan Reports, just leave your question there and we'll ask those things. But let me pick some. Professor Lord Mason, we have sent you a request. If you can accept it for us, and then we'll bring you in. Let me then move quickly and take some of the questions that have come. Now, Richard Asari writes, he says, in which areas should the government cut down costs, and how is that going to help the economy recover? Is that even realistic? Yeah, is that even realistic as we are almost close to elections? That's a question coming from our brother Richard Asari. And then Tommy Shelby also writes, and this is what he writes. He says, what is the take of our panelists on government considering halting some road projects that are not so essential given our current revenue challenges? And and if the projects are donor funded, should we not look at restructuring to cater for much needed sectors to save the economy? Should we not do that to save our economy? Professor Lord Mensah, if you have accepted our request, if you can come in, help us to deal with some of these questions that have come. Okay, I think Prof is trying to join, so we'll come back to you, Dr. Charles. Dr. Charles, you are not happy about what the government, whatever they have said. It looks like the situation on the ground does not match with what was told us by the finance minister. But I will ask you the same question that I have asked Mr. Jackson before. What do you think should be the alternative going forward? What should be the alternative plan that will make those of you in the agri sector satisfied, that could help bring food inflation down from where it is now? Because in our inflation basket, food inflation is the highest, and it is one of the things that really is costing us at the moment.
Yeah, so however, I think it's very simple. What is causing food prices to go high? That should be the first question. One, if farmers have to invest so much to produce, by the end of the harvest, they have to ensure that they will cover their cost of production. Two, another thing that causes high food prices is if input prices are so high, farmers may either reduce their farm sizes, or some farmers will look for alternative enterprise instead of farming. In our context, that is the case. In 2022, when prices of fertilizer, agrochemicals, energy went up, many farmers actually reduced their farm sizes. We did a recent survey. Majority of the farmers have to actually leave farming and then travel to nearest cities to look for other alternative activities. Those who are in it reduce the sizes and at the same time decided not to apply the quality inputs that will give them highest yield. So you take maize like this. If farmers were to put 3 bags of fertilizer, some can only afford 1 bag. And once you put 1 bag, you are reducing your yield by half. Okay. So for us to ensure that farmers increase supply of food commodities in the market is to ensure that we make it possible for them to produce at a lower cost. And what we are saying that because the handlers of agriculture projects for the past few years abuse the inputs that they are supposed to supply to farmers, others also overinflate prices to farmers, and then others are also supplying inferior products. We agree that the subsidy program should be halted. Now, we all propose and agree on the input credit guarantee that was being introduced by Minister of Food and Agri, where aggregators are identified, giving credit guarantee letters to go to the bank, take loans, and then procure inputs and then supply to farmers. When farmers produce, then they'll pay back. We all agree to that. And that was coming at no cost to government. So all this while we are still waiting for government to identify those aggregators, because some lists were already submitted, to identify those aggregators and then support them with the guarantee letters to go and take the loan. That is not happening. Okay. Now, because government is also desperate to increase revenue mobilization, they'd rather increase tax on agro inputs. So those are areas that we think government should look immediately by taking those taxes that are imposed on agro inputs, because that is what is done in every country. If you don't want to give farmers subsidy, just take taxes on agro inputs and the prices will come down. In going forward, what we need to do, I keep saying that we need to invest in our irrigation infrastructure, because all other countries, that's what they're doing today, because you can't rely on rains, because the patterns have changed. The weather pattern cannot be relied on. But all the proposals we made to even create irrigation infrastructure led to a different thing. If you can remember the story of one village, one dam concept that was introduced, almost all the dams that were created are currently not of use. Farmers are not using them. So we are not doing the right thing. So we need to begin to do the right thing, increase investment in agriculture. Even if we invest, we should just create an environment for farmers or the private sector to go in and invest. That's what we are calling for. Now, going to look, this year alone, I have started engaging 5 banks. We will discuss, it will get to the midway. They will do the assessment and say, no, the area is very risky. We are not interested in dealing with you. So it's very difficult for you to get credit if you want to go into the mainstream production. Banks will give you money to go into processing, to go into marketing, to go into packaging. But if you want to take credit and go into the main production, many banks are not interested in that. And that's where government comes in to ensure that banks are mandated to give certain portfolios of their loans to the main production, not just agriculture. Production is our major problem. While you produce, private sector are willing to take those commodities and add value, package them, and then put them in the market. So we fail to do all those things. So for us, we think that if the ministry is actually committed to taking those measures, we have given them all these recommendations I'm telling you. If they are committed to taking those measures and then cut down the size of government, okay, a lot of money will be saved in that area. And if it's invested in agriculture, I'm sure things will change for better.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chasnaba. I will come back to you now. Mr. Bento, if you are there and you can hear me, I would like to come to you. But ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it's 8 p.m. here in Ghana, or 20:07. Across the world, wherever you are, you might be either ahead of us or behind us in terms of the time. This is the point where we allow you, our listeners, let me put it that way, to also come in with your thoughts. So what you can do for us is to come in with your questions and answers, and then we'll do that. But Mr. Bentil, a few questions that have come up that I thought that I should draw some of them to your attention. He says, what do they suspect that is the reason for the finance minister not wanting to resign? I mean, from where you sit, I mean, this is a man that you seem to have a lot of challenge with. Even the members of parliament on the majority side wanted him to go. Some way, somehow, they become silent.
Hello, Norvan, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Bentil.
You're asking me to read the mind of another human being. You're asking, why do I think the finance minister does not want to resign?
What is his challenge?
Right. So, look, one of the things I've learned growing up is not to bother myself trying to understand people's motives. I do not want to spend any time trying to understand people's motives. Judge people by what they do. And when it comes to why they do what they do, you can only guess, but you can never be right. So, honestly, I am not sure I understand why the finance minister does not want to resign from a job which he says he does not take a salary from, okay, and which all of us, despite all the respect that we have for him, think that he has had a very tough time, dealing with. So I am not going to go into why. But the point is this: if he stays on the job, then he has to do it. And doing it is not like doing it the way he would want. My problem, again, like I started, is that I want my doctor to tell me the truth and then prescribe for me medicine that will work. All right. So the the mid-year review budget that I had, what I was expecting to hear was, we started thinking we were going to go through this year this way. And then we hit a rock and everything broke down. That means we are going to do this, which is IMF. Now, what that means is that we are going to go in this other way. But unfortunately, I didn't hear him say that. If I had anything to say, I would say, look, just explain to me whether you understand the problem or not. And if you understand the problem, then please tell me exactly what your proposal of the solution is. I haven't heard proposals of solutions. All right. And if I am the person who has to deal with that, I will say, please, does anybody understand? I'm going to listen to all of them and I'm going to pick the one who I think is making the most sense to me, not the one who is telling me what I want to hear, even if it's nice. I want the one who tells me this is the medicine you have to take, this is how you're going to take it, and this is how things are going to, pan out. Now, unfortunately, I cannot say that the people handling our finance ministry have done a good job. It is obvious for us all to see. They crashed. Now, I thought they would give us some idea of where they are going. I don't have any idea of where we are going. All right. Why he will not resign, like I said, I will not question motives. It comes down to the president. But you have a situation where you have a president in the twilight of his, presidential term, and it doesn't seem like it is much of a concern to him that he has to do some serious shake-up in that area. So honestly, like Joe said, it is not an easy situation, because now everybody, it's like you are in a house and your parents tell you figure out how you're going to make it through this mess. All right. And it's a sad commentary, but this is what we have to live with. And so we have to find a way out of it.
Very well. Thank you. Uncle Joe, I mean, I want you to look at this question that was thrown to the panelists. Now, considering the fact that the question was, what is your take on government considering to halt some road projects that are not so essential given our current revenue challenges? And if the projects are donor funded, should we not rather look at restructuring so we can use the fund to cater for the very most important needed areas of the economy?
Okay, Norvan, listen, very clearly, we need a reprioritization of the things that we consider essential. Otherwise, we are just running around doing the same things again. We definitely do need a reprioritization. And it's not just about roads. Are they critical or are they donor funded? It's about free SHS. It's about allowances for school teachers, etc. It's about Agenda 111. It's about the number of appointees that we have, the number of ministers that we have, the number of loss-making SOEs that are still drawing down the purse. We need a dramatic cut in the size of government. That we do. Do we even need as many ministers as we have? Can we not govern with 40 ministers? Do we need all the appointees that are littered all over the place? And I could go on and on. The key thing is that reprioritization must be done, including roads, including hospitals, including everything we spend our money on. Norvan, over to you.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much. There's another question. We cannot underestimate the impact of fiscal discipline in economic management. But what is the take of our speakers on the good this world have done the country, given our government's continued blame on Russia-Ukraine war? Mr. Jackson.
Listen, as for Russian-Ukraine war, it is something you have. Does it have an effect? Yes. But why is it that our numbers, our figures are the worst possible ever? Are we the only ones facing a Russian-Ukraine war? Are we the only ones who went through COVID? Why has this effect been so devastating on our economy? Others have faced the same thing and did not default on their debt. Others have faced the same thing and their currency has not depreciated by anything up to 50%. Others have faced the same thing, and yes, they're having higher inflation than required, but is their inflation stubbornly at 42%? Others have had the same problem, but is there a monetary policy rate at 30%? And I could go on and on and on. As much as I admit Russia-Ukraine has had an effect, COVID has had an effect, the mess we are in is not solely due to Russia-Ukraine. I dare say it may not even be that much more significant. What has happened are the things that we ourselves have done wrong. Over to you, Norvan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Let me come back to you, Dr. Charles Nyaba. So whilst we wait to get Professor Lord Mensah on, he's trying to just reset himself, and then we would just get him on. Dr. Charles, beyond the challenges that you're talking about, which is well situated, that is making us see food inflation where it is. The fact that for you, if government was to take away the subsidies, then of course the taxes on agricultural inputs for farming should have been looked at, which the government has not done, of course, and that is having the rippling effect that is having on you, the farmers, and is making some farmers leave and all that. In the next few years ahead, what you envisage is going to be the biggest challenge for us as a nation if we don't seem to put things right?
Yeah, so Norvan, I think let me explain this. The subsidies has already been taken off, and it is not the case that those taxes on agro inputs were already there. It is during the IMF negotiation that those taxes were introduced. In 2021, there were no taxes on agro inputs. There were no taxes on farm machineries. There were no taxes when you are bringing improved seeds outside the country. So this, I suspect, is part of the conditions, the IMF condition. But I'm only surprised that we choose to include that as a condition without looking for alternative, because agriculture sector is a pillar that triggers growth in the other sectors. Once agriculture sector is not performing well, your industrial sector that depends on the agriculture for raw material will definitely not perform well. Your import substitution will be a problem. Your exchange rate will be a problem, and that's what we are experiencing now. So in the next few years, if things have not changed, what will happen is that we have few farmers who will be able to increase their farm sizes. You have few farmers who will actually be able to maintain their production. And once you have few farmers producing, a majority of them are scaling down their farm sizes, it means that food supply will be lower than demand. And you know the simple demand and supply theory. When demand is higher than supply, prices will go up. And in worst case scenario, we have to import. So once we continue to import, it also have implications on our currency. And at the moment, when I tell you the basic food that we eat, the maize that we say we are self-sufficient in maize, greater quantities, more than 50%, is coming from our neighboring countries. In the last 3 months, when the Boko Haram issues happened in Burkina Faso, and our trucks were not allowed to go to Burkina to bring tomatoes, you saw what happened. And as we speak, you cannot get any tomatoes for 1 meal, less than 10 cities or 20 cities in the market. And this is getting worse and worse. We are in the bumper season. Every year around this time, especially in the southern part of the country, many farmers have started harvesting. So food should have flooded the market, and price of maize, cassava, and vegetables should have come down. Go to the market today. Prices are still stand still. So it means that when we get to the lean season, things will get worse. So what I can say is that if nothing is done at the moment to ensure that we question those who are going into the minor season production, there will be limited supply of food in 2023. So once there is limited supply of food, there are two things we can do. Either we import food or we allow it like that and there will be food crisis. At the moment, you know our food security situation is not that good. Majority, about 60% of people in the rural areas have actually shifted from a moderate food insecurity to severe food insecurity. About 15% of the population are suffering from severe food insecurity. And yet we are not seeing any hope that this situation is going to change. So for us, we are waiting. The Minister of Finance has told us that we are not going to see any changes in the mid-year budget prior to reading the budget when we met him, and that all the major changes, he is going to factor them in the November reading of the 2024 budget. So we just hope that something drastic happen around that time. But as we speak, I just want all of you to understand that farmers have not received any support, any form of support from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture after the fertilizer subsidy and seed subsidy program were taken out. What is rather done is to increase taxes and increase cost of production. So it's not easy for farmers.
I see. Doc, let me ask you, are you able to share with us, off the top of your head, some of the products that we, apart from the tomatoes, the onions that we know, what are some of the products that you guys import from Burkina that even the challenges in Burkina could hamper and affect our food security?
Yeah, so the major commodities we currently import from Burkina are sorghum, and then there are a lot of food processing industries in Ghana that are using sorghum. If you go to Doma, almost about over 90% of the farmers depend in the Côte d'Ivoire for maize. Onions, we import onions from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. livestock, all kinds of livestock, taking it from cattle, goat, sheep. We import all that from Burkina Faso. And today, contrary to those days that Ghana fertilizer was being smuggled to Burkina Faso, we are our farmers closer to Togo border are getting their fertilizer from Togo. You won't believe it. Simply because we have increased taxes in fertilizer to the extent that the price is so skyrocketing beyond the neighboring countries. So these are the few commodities that I can mention that we currently depend in Burkina Faso. But if you come to the vegetables, apart from tomatoes, we also import a lot of pepper from Burkina Faso. We import onions. I've mentioned that already from Burkina Faso.
Wow. Then somebody will ask, what is our farmers producing for us then? Because maize used to be one of the major commodities that we're producing here. So if farmers who need them are now, procuring them from neighboring countries, talk of the pepper that you're talking about. I mean, talk of the sorghum and all that we thought were being produced somewhere up north. If all these things, then what are people producing then?
Yeah, so
what are people farming?
Yeah, Norvan, you see, let me also put this picture. If you remember, in the last 5 years, government has been promoting industrial crops. And one of them that has effect on food crops is cashew. So years back, we were all aware that Tekima was the bread basket. When you go to Tekima market, you all get all kinds of food, yam, cassava, maize, everything you get there. Today, Tekima import food from northern Ghana and Burkina because there is no even land for production of maize in Tekima. All the lands have been used to produce cashew. And to make matters worse for the farmers, this year there was no price for cashew. And all these cashew produced, it's not like we process them in Ghana, we export them to China and India. Okay? Northern Ghana, as I said, it's not like farmers are not producing. Farmers are still producing. We still produce our rice, we still produce our maize, we still produce some tomatoes to some limited extent because government have not made tomatoes production attractive for farmers. So most farmers who used to do tomatoes in large quantities now move to producing other cereal crops because the women will prefer to go to Burkina to bring tomatoes than to buy from the Ghanaian farmers. Our tomatoes, because government have not made any investment to produce tomatoes at a very high cost. And apart from that, the quality cannot be compared to Burkina tomatoes. Okay. So these are some of the things that are happening. But I want to state that Ghanaians have developed some interest in farming, especially the private sector. But those who are doing that are doing at their own cost. People are creating their own rules to their farms, their farms. They are sending power to their own farms. They are taking loan at their own risk to go and invest in farm machinery, combines, and all what you are seeing. Government doesn't have hand in it. So you ask yourself, the budget allocation that is always going to agriculture sector, where do we put the money? Okay, we use it to pay salaries, we use it for administration and other things, but nothing to the farmer. The only project government is pursuing, which we support, but I don't see that project being able to actually supply enough food to address the food security is the economic anchor project, which is taking place in the Volta region and OT region. Okay, that project is currently looking at 10,000 acres of land where government created canals, created feeder routes, sent in power, and then to allow the private sector to go into invest. It's fantastic. But what we were expecting is to see similar projects spring out across the other regions of the country. But that hasn't been done. If we are yet to see that, we are hoping to see that in the shortest possible time.
Very well, thank you very much. Mr. Bento, there's a question for you. Before I go to Professor Lord Mensah, let me take this question for you. He says, this particular question is to Mr. Bento. If you were the finance minister at this moment of this country's challenges, let me put that way, what 3 things would you change or advise on to salvage an ailing economy?
Norvan, if I
Yes,
was the
sir.
If I was the finance minister and I had been the finance minister from the beginning, and I ended up with this kind of situation, I would resign just out of principle. When you are in leadership and you take up a task and you have this kind of catastrophic failure, okay, I think it's just a matter of principle that you resign. I don't have time to tell you, all the stories about, other people and how they done. It's just a matter of principle because this is public office. Now, I need to also say it is not necessarily a disgrace. It's just an admission that, look, in this particular area, you couldn't do public service. Okay, I mean, being a minister is different from private sector. I think our minister has proven himself. He's been successful in other areas, and we respect him for that. He could not do it in this particular area, and I think the proper thing would have been to resign. That's the first thing. Now, be that as it may, he's there. If I were the finance minister today and we had a situation that we have right now, the first thing I'm going to do is a leadership issue. I will press on the government to show that they are interested in showing leadership out of this problem first by taking the bitter pills that they want the citizenry to take. Some of us criticize the size of government from day one. It is still too large. So, if even for the sake of sending a signal, I will halve the number of ministers we have to 50. And I will say, Mr. President, we don't have the money to support all these people. So please do that. And if he doesn't do that, I will resign. Now, if you have the number to 50, whether we save money, we don't save money, you come out with a clear budget and then you feed the productive nodes in our economy. We have a large civil and public service. We have non-performing state entities. Let me make this point. There is no good reason to keep any state enterprise that makes a loss. So if a state enterprise makes a loss, I will draw a line. I will tell them that this is 31st December 2023. I want to hear and see everybody. The one that is costing us money, we will shut it down and put it up for sale. There is no reason to keep it. All right. So then I will go through the rest of the government setup, okay, and look for the places where the money is leaking and we're not getting productivity. All right. One of the things that you will do as a finance minister is also to plug the leakages and the waste and the corruption, which is why we needed to have a good auditor general who will go after people because there are billions that we could collect from surcharges and disallowances. If I finance minister, this is on top of my head, and I think they are low-hanging fruit. They will not happen immediately, but they will send a lot of signal, and you will actually get some money. All right, you actually, when you stop the state enterprises from just wasting money, when you stop the waste profligacy and you stop the corruption in the public and civil services, when you cut down the size of government and let people go and do actual work that brings us, proper results, you are going to at least save money. But the best thing is that you will send a signal. Now, when you come around and you tell the rest of us that, look, you're running a small business, but I want you to pay more for electricity. We are paying 4 times more for electricity than we were paying 2 years ago. Then I will take that as my sacrifice. So I could work, long on this issue, but I think you get the picture.
Thank you very much. Let me go to Professor Lord Mensah to get his thoughts about this whole economy and then what he makes of the finance minister's presentation. The fact that some people feel that, look, this was just one of those things. He came to just preach to us, quoting Bible scriptures on all that.
Yeah, Norvan. Good evening. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, if you look at the mid-year budget review and your topic, where it talks about whether we are in recession or there's a growth signal, I can tell you point blank that we are in a recession, but the Ghanaian economy is in such a way that we have not been able to calibrate, and I'm a mathematician. So when I speak, I want things to be quantified. We've not been able to calibrate exactly what recession means to the Ghanaian economy. We've been running on a yield curve which is inverted. And if I say a yield curve that is inverted, I mean a situation where the short-term interest rate is higher than the long-term interest rate. And there's no way economies can run like that. You can keep a yield curve that is inverted and read a budget and speak around the budget the way you want it. Go on with semantics as you want. I mean, some of us who cannot speak that much of good English may applaud you, but I can tell you that you're not solving the economic problem of this country. This economy is in trouble. It's an economy that we must appreciate that the government is financing long-term investment with short-term instrument like treasury bills. And as a result of that, the short-term interest rate is going to be hanging on the higher side continuously forever onto the short term, and for long term. And we can only solve this problem only when government gives us the signal that the borrowing that they are doing comes down. But we never saw it in the mid-year budget review. It was a budget review that came with, all the what do we call it? It's flagship programs, paraded around. Let me tell you, economics is not about English. No man. Economics is not about English. It's about understanding the principles and believing what the principle stands for. Let's throw out the politics and believe that, look, the Ghanaian economy is now suffering from short-term pressures. Short-term pressures in a sense that if an investor wakes up in the morning and is thinking about investing in the financial space, forget about the real assets. I like an investor who wants to go into real estate, who wants to go into other things. Even the real estate, inflation is catching up with you. If you want to put
Hello, Prof. Prof, I think we may have. Hello. I think we may have lost Prof a little bit. Prof, if you can reposition yourself very well for us, we hardly can hear you. But whilst we wait for Prof to come back, let me come back to you. Hello, Prof. Let me come back to you, Dr. Charles Nyaba. There's a question for you, and I think Era, right? Mr. Nyaba informs us that all this information he's sharing with us tonight have been shared with the Minister of Agric. My question is that, in his own opinion, does he think the Agric Ministry is not well resourced to address the poems or the very issues that affect us, or it is rather a non will I say challenge or kind of non-concern that they are showing over there? Dr. Charles Naba.
Okay, Norman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you look at the 2023 situation, I think the farmers have been very moderate with their demands to government. Previously, you hear farmers calling for fertilizer subsidy. The fertilizer is not coming. This year, you've not heard that. Simply because we understood that we are in crisis situation. So the engagements that were done, we all understood and agreed that we need to also cut down or reduce our expectations. So during the engagement, we were made clear that government is going to take a different path. And that path is to actually introduce aggregator system. I didn't explain it clear. That's why maybe the questioner didn't get the position right. After the fertilizer and seed subsidy program was taken off, government then reviewed the planting for food and jobs and introduced what they call aggregator system. The aggregator is a private person who would have already been working with farmers, supporting them in one way or the other. But because cost of credit is high and
Your auntie
usually
no more
farmers,
regrets you.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
Dr. Charles, never go ahead.
yeah, because cost of credit is very high or expensive, and usual banks are not interested in advancing loans to people who want to go to the agriculture sector. Government then comes in, identifies those aggregators who are already working with farmers in the various districts, and then gives them credit guarantee to go to the bank and take loans. When they take loans, they identify service provider. Service provider could be somebody who owns tractors, somebody who supply fertilizer, somebody who supplies seeds, somebody who provide combined services. Then that private person, whom we call an aggregator, pays the services for those people to provide those services to the farmers. So farmers don't actually pay anything. Then when the farmers produce, you take the produce and then deliver to government in kind. Then if it's government or any other output market, they pay the money directly to the bank. So we thought that it was a more sustainable way of financing agriculture activities, since previously government always complained of no funds, fertilizer companies complain of supplying to fertilizer and then government is not paying. So we all agree to that. For unknown reason, the document that has been developed, I'm told, is submitted to cabinet, waiting for cabinet approval. We are in the third quarter of the year and nothing has been done. So that's why I'm saying that all these things we are talking about, we have submitted those inputs to the Ministry of Food and Agri and Ministry of Finance. We'll be making a follow-up. You go a follow-up, they say, oh, okay, the program will be announced next week. Next week, we don't hear anything. Last week, we engaged, say, oh, it was going to be announced in the first week of August. We are in first week of August, we haven't heard anything. Maybe if you get information at all, it will be tomorrow, so we are waiting to see. So what I'm thinking is that we are more interested in playing politics with the sector. And that's what we've done in the past. We are all hearing what we were saying about planting for food and jobs. Those who are outside were thinking that planting for food and jobs was actually giving inputs to farmers for free. And they don't know what farmers were going through. And it's the same thing we are still experiencing. Okay, so we are thinking that we actually need to be more serious with the agriculture sector, because there are a lot of people who are willing to actually take agriculture as their main career business, but because of the environment, those people will not go in. Because if you're going to a sector which is already risky, and government is not creating the enabling environment for you to go, you prefer to go and put your money in a place that do not actually require so much risk.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles. Now, but let me go back to Professor Lord Mensah, and then thank you very much, Mr. Benyambuachi, for joining. I would have you give us just a short remarks after Professor Lord Mensah. So I'll send you a request, please.
Yeah, so Norvan, sorry for the interruption. I think I had my battery run down. I told you I was on my way to the house. So what I can say is that the problem has to do with identifying whether we are in a recess or not. We are in a recess, and as I indicated, our yield curve is already, downward sloping, which means the long term is giving you lower interest rate than, the short term. Now, if government wants to raise money for all the flagship programs that have been laid out in the mid-year budget review, and remember, these flagship programs are not programs that will generate cash flows to the state in the immediate to medium term as we speak now. And so if government is, looking ahead, going on with this project, with this limited sources of financing, and if I say limited sources of finance, we should all appreciate it that government has lost the Eurobond market. Government has lost long-term bonds in the local market. And the only financing source is the short term. So how is government going to finance, these infrastructures that has been laid out in the flagship programs, especially one of them is the Agenda 111. And I heard Uncle Joe mention the Agenda 111. How is it going to be financed? And I've been highlighting on this, immediately after the media budget review somewhere on one of the platforms. And trust me, it's going to be difficult. Having to hear that, 83 of them are in a phase of, completion. Trust me, if you take, and the last time I went into the what do you call the budget, one of the Agenda 111 hospitals will be costing us around, 16 million USD. That means that 12 million is for the structural build up and 4 million into the equipment and all those things that that will go into the hospital, the structure to make it a hospital. So I'm talking about the hospital equipment. So for me, and if you multiply that 60 million by 111, it's a lot of money. That's about almost a $2 billion worth of project, which I don't see being materializing or coming up somewhere within the next 2 years. So from where I sit, I think government did not get its priorities right when it comes to the budget that was read to Ghanaians. I see it to be numbers that were just thrown out there to whet the appetite of Ghanaians. We are going to do that. We are going to do that. But as to where the monies will be coming from, it has questions, that goes with it. So for me, you may read a budget. It's a mandate of the finance minister to to do a budget review, especially when you read a budget in times that there's almost everything falling out of place. We expect that you come and do a review to Ghanaians, and I was expecting that we'll see some realities in the budget. And from the budget that was read, I could see that there were just numbers thrown out there to the extent that I don't see any, serious achievement when it comes to infrastructure. Because I was expecting Agenda 111 to be prioritized. Some of the districts may have their hospitals, and they will say, they will say that they've done, their feasibility studies to indicate, that okay, fine. These are the 100 and out of 200 and something, districts to require, hospitals. But some of these 111 hospitals have their initial district hospitals, which can be re-equipped to make it a full-blown, hospital for the people who are living there. So why would you go on to budget for a new infrastructure? So it's like, it's a budget that you don't see any reality in it. And anybody that will sit down to appreciate how a budget goes, right, you will come to understand that these numbers that were thrown out there, government will find it, difficult to achieve them in the next, 6 months. And budgets are for fiscal years. So if you tell me you will build, 101, hospitals, I'm expecting that by the next year, the 101 will not reflect in the budget again. Because you are not, bringing it up as, a continuous project that will go for the next 5 years. Once it appears, in the budget, and you indicate that you are going to build 111 hospitals, it is expected of you to finish that within the fiscal year, so that when we go into the next year, it doesn't appear again. Let me give you a typical example. Dodowa Adenta Road, which is 3 lane in, 3 lane out. It has appeared in the budget, at least if my memory will serve me right, for the past 5 years. You know the number of people who have made attempt to do projects along that stretch because of the fact that this project has appeared in the budget, and as a result of that, they're going to open up the road. And we know the essence of building up a road, the commercial benefit and then the social benefit that goes with it. So effectively, if you throw out, numbers, and you throw out infrastructure, development that you cannot finish within the fiscal year, then it becomes problem, especially when we find ourselves in this tough times that your financing has been limited to only short term. So from where I sit, I understand that we are in a recess. We are in a recess very well because it has affected even the topmost, bank of all, resort. A bank that is supposed to stand for liquidity, a bank that is supposed to stand for, rescue. We don't see that in the central bank. That should tell you that the system has failed. And once the system is failed, it affects everything. At least from my basic economics that I know, once you have a systemic exposure, it affects everything. It doesn't matter whether you are an SOE, which is isolated from, the state machinery of financing or whatever, you are affected. And it has affected Bank of Ghana. It has affected Bank of Ghana's balance sheet. They are recording losses, and that is a clear indication that the economy is down. And it's a matter of accepting it. Norvan, I can tell you that if you accept that this economy is down, you should be able to measure the level of dip we find ourselves in. And once once you're able to measure the level of dip, you should be able to, find, a situation to solve it, a way to solve it. But if you cannot identify how deep you are, trust me, it will be difficult to come out of it. And I can tell you, in all the advanced world, anytime they find themselves in a recession, the first thing is to admit that they are in a recession. Once you admit that you are in a recession, these parameters, A, parameter B, parameter C, is not going on well, you find a way to reorganize yourself to come out of it. The policies that you rolled out are going to be stringent. The policies that you roll out are not going to pamper anybody within the policy. As we speak now, Cocoa Board is in trouble. What measures have we put in place to ensure that Cocoa Board comes out of the trouble? Cocoa Board, which is supposed to stand for, which is supposed to be independent, because all that I know all this while is that Cocoa Board's, liabilities that they take on is contingent on the beans they sent out. The beans they send out, not necessarily excessive liabilities that will go beyond the inflows of the beans. So it's clear. I mean, nobody should, to throw dust in my eyes as I sit here that the Ghanaian economy is in recess, and therefore we may have to admit, the recess. And then once we admit the recess, we should be able to measure it, quantify it. And once we quantify it, we should be able to come with the solutions that goes with it in a way to come out of it. So, that's all I can say. The media budget review, it doesn't prove any signal of growth. It's a serious recession that we find ourselves in. It's unfortunate we did not admit the level of, dip that we find ourselves in the media budget review. And as a result of that, it will be difficult to come out of it as we speak now. How can a government that has, limited resources of financing parade all these, flagship programs? How are they going to go about it? Somebody would tell you a flagship program like a housing, project that was commissioned recently at Pokuasi. Was that in the budget? It wasn't. And I heard it's 50-60. I can tell you that it's 40-60. The 40% that the state is providing, did it reflect in the budget? It did not. If it's an equity that the state wants to identify the land being provided to the private developer and say that this land is part of our equity into the project, how do you quantify that? Is it in the budget? If it's in the budget, that should be part of your assets that you are parading into a project. We never saw that in the budget. So, no one, from where I sit, I think there's more to do when it comes to this economy. More detail to be provided for my understanding than just throwing out numbers and then speaking English around the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah. We are grateful for your comments as well. And let's just take the closing remarks and then we try to bring the curtains down on today's space. If you just joined us, it's been the Norvan Report Economic Governance Platform Twitter Space series. And today we're having another town hall where we were looking at whether or not the mid-year budget statement that was made was a recession that we are seeing, or rather a growth signal. And of course, we've heard from the various speakers on the platform tonight who unanimously agree that you cannot say, it was a growth signal or turning the corner, as was being indicated by the finance minister, Ken Oforiatta, during the speech last week, Monday, on the floor of Parliament, and how it's being defended by government communicators as it should be. So, in the next 5 minutes, if you have a question that you want to ask, we can give you the opportunity for you to be able to ask your question, where you send us a request, we accept it, and then we'll quickly allow you to ask your question, or if it's a contribution, you have the opportunity to do so. So let us know quickly, and then we can bring you in on that. But let me go to some of the questions that have been tweeted at us. Let's take this one. We cannot underestimate the impact of fiscal discipline in economic management. But what is the take of our speakers on the good this world have done in the country? I mean, Prof, let me have your thoughts on that. Professor Lord Mensah.
Hello. Yes, Norvan.
Yeah. So the question was, he feels that we cannot underestimate the impact of fiscal discipline on the economic management. And what is your take on the?
We seem to have that problem in a sense that I think I've been looking at the way things have unfolded over the past years, and clearly I can see some kind of preemption when it comes to the finance minister's attitude in digging away the Fiscal Responsibility Act. See, the Fiscal Responsibility Act was there to guide us. When we're exiting the IMF, in our own wisdom, I mean, every human being is a rational being. And we brought in the Fiscal Responsibility Act with the Fiscal Responsibility, Committee to control the way the government spends. And for the past, since 2019, 2020, that this act was thrown away through Parliament, has it been brought back? And because it has not been brought back, the finance minister can seek any amount from the Bank of Ghana and spend it anyhow, because there's no limit when it comes to the threshold that the central bank is supposed to finance the government activities. So I see it to be kind of a preemption, an activity that was premeditated, and to some extent bring the economy to the level where we find it now. Because if you throw out an act, and that act was something that was controlling government spending, immediately after the COVID, having COVID tax or COVID levy in place, you should have brought the act back. But did we see that? We didn't see it. So all these years from 2021, 2022, 2023, half year through, the government has that liberty to borrow anyhow from the central bank. And the central bank, as I always say, when it comes to, the what we call the governance autonomy, it has been compromised long ago. The only thin line that we were holding on as a country to have some hope in the central bank was what we called the operational autonomy. And that operational autonomy has been compromised in this particular administration, in the sense that the administration was able to borrow from the central bank anyway, anyhow, and look at where we find ourselves now. To the extent that the central bank has lost about 60 billion. So from where I sit, I think the fiscal discipline will not there for political reasons. And we are waiting for a government that will come in and say, I have put in some thresholds to say that at this time, as a central bank, or even if I'm going to appoint a governor, I want the governor to be independent. The governor must do his job devoid of the executive. But, we never saw that in this current administration. So, as for fiscal discipline, my brother, for political reasons, it will be difficult, to deal with it. And you see, Ghanaians, we shy away from the truth. Let me tell you, the truth is always the truth. You can't run away from it. I know we've had speakers on the platform, they've come and gone, but the truth is that, the spade must be called a spade. The executive and then the monetary policy holders are in bed as we speak now. Because who appoints the central bank governor? It is the president. And before the president even appoint you, who knows? Master, I'm putting you there because you do my job for me. But do we have the same thing at other places? And anywhere, the literature, is clear on that. Anywhere that governance autonomy and operational autonomy of the central bank is compromised, there's no way inflation can be controlled. And that is why we find our inflation going up like that. And the same central bank would turn around and be telling us that they are catching up inflation through monetary policy control, which will swell up inflation, which will swell up interest rate, for which interest rate will never come down for investors and people who require funds to go and borrow at a cheaper cost to go and put up in the economy. So from where I sit, I think that fiscal discipline for political reasons, and if you should pick this treating, if you should part of it, there's no way we can control that kind of, fiscal discipline. It's difficult.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bento, let me come to you for your closing remarks, what you think. Or now, obviously, we are going to be entering September. October, November will come again, and then we will be expecting the government to read the next budget for the 2024 fiscal year. With what you see, what good would that be to us? Or what do you expect should be done?
Well, what I'm seeing, what it seems to me is that we are on our own, but unfortunately, we've been on our own for a while. This economy is not really what the managers of the economy intend it to be. This economy is running on its own, and we are trying to keep it from falling off a cliff. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't intend to be negative, but I feel the best the economy, the managers of the economy can do now is to try and prevent it from falling off the cliff. Interestingly, too, I don't think they have the tools or the power to do that. They have lost it. So it now falls back on the private sector. So I heard my friend talking about the agricultural sector. You expect the government to have made an impact in agric that will make a difference. Now that is not there. So whatever we get from agric will be through the sweat and toil of the private sector practitioners in agric who are struggling, making their own roads to their farms and doing everything from seeds to marketing, in a place in the cities. Same for every other industry. So I would say, look, let us all work hard, own small corners, and let us hope that things will not go beyond the point where we can manage. So if you ask me, I'll say keep your costs low, keep your head up, work hard. Okay, sometimes your government becomes the tide that raises everybody up, but sometimes too you have to really struggle and do it by yourself. Fortunately, we've done it for a while, so it is not impossible. Where we will land, a lot of it depends on how this IMF thing turns out. And if we are going to make a difference or we are going to change this kind of cyclical problem, we'll have to do something about our governance and our constitution. We need to focus on that. The economic problems we have in this country are not economic problems, they are governance problems. And if we deal with the governance, we will see that the economics will start making sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Charles Number, 2023 is obviously going to go to an end. And as you said, they have made a lot of promises to you guys, especially those in the agri sector. And finally, as you close with us, what do you anticipate? Do you think that anything good can come out, even going into the 2024 budget, considering the tight economic environment that we find ourselves?
I don't want to be too pessimistic. Maybe some time ago, somebody said I was causing fear and panic. On our part, we are doing all what it takes to ensure that we supply enough food. So far, I have on my own, and then with my association, we supply a lot of seeds and fertilizer to farmers in northern, upper east, upper west, and then northeast region. They are producing the crops so far are looking good. The weather is not too bad. So on our own, we are doing something. But I'm not able to talk with authority that 2024 year is going to be better than 2023. Because in 2023, at least, in 2022, at least, we've seen some little investment from government in a form of a seed and fertilizer subsidy, in respect of the fact that farmers complain about the quality, others complain about the prices, others complain about timing. At least something happened. But in 2023, as we speak, nothing has happened. I am still hoping to get a report from the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the budget that is allocated to the sector, what it has been used for. Because at the moment, nothing has happened. So I think the season itself is looking good. By then, to be able to say that this year is better than last year, I can't say that with authority. And I cannot also say that the inflation figures we are receiving now is going to go down soon, because we are almost in the bumper season and the food prices are still high. So when we enter into the lean season, nobody can predict how it will look like. So we will do our best, but 2024 is definitely not going to be better than 2023.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you very much. Our guests, Mr. Kofi Bentil, Professor Lord Mensah, Mr. Joe Jackson, and then Dr. Charles Nyaba, for your time this evening. We are grateful to you for joining today's space, and also to you, our listeners and our friends who always come to make this space a wonderful one. We are so grateful to all of you. I want to say a very good evening to all of you. My name has been Norvan Hayford, and this has been the Norvan Report and the Economics Governance Platform Twitter Space series. And this was the other town hall that we brought to you. Next week, we'll revert to always bring in our 2 or 3 guests to discuss other issues that affect our economy. And this is how we draw the curtains down on today's space. And for those of our viewers who were also watching us on television on the ABC News GH, we are thankful to you for your time. And